Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Power of Attunement. My name is Sece Foster, and I am an attunement practitioner and an attunement teacher here at the Sunrise Ranch School of Attunement. And before I get going on this topic, because it's going to be a good one, it's going to be juicy, I just want to invite you to subscribe, to like this video if it has meaning for you, if it brings you some sort of clarity, some sort of comfort, some sort of inspiration. My mission and the mission of all the people who are a part of this channel is to bring attunement to the world, to bring spiritual regeneration to humanity. So the big topic for today is attunement as the remedy for addiction. You may say, well, wow, that's a bold statement, Cece. And in some ways it is. But I want to talk about my own experience in my own life and how it relates to the principles of attunement. Many of you, if you've dealt with addiction yourself, whether it's an addiction to alcohol, drugs, sex, food, maybe you've done a 12-step program, or you're familiar with a 12-step program. And what I notice about that and how it relates to what I'm going to talk about here is, in many ways, in the 12-step program, it is all about bringing some sort of spiritual awakening. And the first step, in that 12-step program is really coming to a place of surrender. Coming to a place of surrender to the infinite source of our being. And that is truly what attunement is about. And it's an ever-expanding journey because, let's face it, we are all like peeling off the layers that cover up the true self, the radiant self, the powerful self, the loving self, the creator that we all are. There are parts of the human experience in our culture, whether that culture is from our family or the outer culture, that have put layers of illusion, layers of shame, layers of fear into our human experience, and then we forget, we fall asleep. Think about when you were a kid. If you can tune into that era of your life and recognize that at that time, waking up in the morning full of energy, in the moment, as a child, we shouldn't necessarily have to worry about the future or ruminate upon the past. And I do know that we all, in some ways, have had to deal with our childhood traumas, that most of us do not have a so-called perfect experience of our childhood. So there are some things that can knock us off center when we're kids, but there's a certain energy I'm talking about. This energy that is really seeking to be claimed. This primal spirituality, because the truth is we are all born into this experience as a spiritual being. And the crisis that we see across the globe of addiction is truly, in my opinion, a spiritual crisis. It is what happens for us as human beings when we feel separate and alone, when we feel as if there are powers outside of us that are controlling our world, our circumstance, when we feel victimized, when we feel alone in it all. And I'm going to speak right from my personal experience. So I do have a history of addiction, and we all have different levels of that, right? You see some people who are like down into the depths. They may be living on the street. They may be just being eaten alive, so to speak, by the driving force of addiction. And what I want to talk about here in my own experience is this has been a overtime kind of remedy. For me personally, the addictive patterns in my life weren't necessarily like the kind that overwhelm and where you go to the bottom, so to speak, of like physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain. It never quite got that way for me, but what it did do is it really brought a level of disempowerment to my life. Because what I was doing is I was covering up the emotional pain, the things that I couldn't really speak to or didn't feel I was able to speak to. I was using drugs and alcohol on a level where I used it to change my state, to feel better, to feel a little numbed out from what was going on in my life. And around 2011 was the first time I went, okay, this is a problem. And because my soul yearned for the full expression of what I came here to be. I didn't know, I couldn't name it at that time, but that's what it was. It's like there was this discomfort, there was this pain of me not living into my authentic self, that it really was a time for me to get honest with myself. That, hey, this is not necessarily normal behavior, or maybe it is normal in these days and times, but it wasn't, and it wasn't something that was in integrity. And what I mean by integrity is not just doing what is right versus not what is right. But integrity, if you look up that word, it means more than that. Yes, it is about doing what is right, not just for myself, but for the whole picture. So that's one aspect of integrity. But when you think of integrity, like the integrity of a building, when it's built right, it's strong, it's stable, it can withstand the storms of life. It can withstand earthquakes, it can withstand hurricanes, because that building is built in integrity. It's built to withstand those things. And the reality is we are built that way. We are built to withstand the challenges of life. We have just forgotten. So this is, in my view, attunement has assisted me over time to dissolve those addictive patterns. And so saying that attunement is the remedy, again, that may seem like a bold statement, especially if you know someone you're closely connected to who is dealing with addiction, or if you yourself have been dealing with addiction of some sort. It can seem like one of those things that's just so hard to overcome. And in my experience, what I have found is it was hard to overcome of my own will. Right? So kind of going back to that place of surrender to something bigger than us is an essential part. So in attunement, when we're going from the top down and doing this energy medicine practice, the first thing we do when we're receiving attunement is to open our hearts to love, to open our hearts to the love of the infinite creator, the great mystery, God, spirit, the great mother, whatever we choose to name that power, that presence. The first thing is an opening to that and a surrender to that, and seeking the guidance of a higher wisdom and a higher love. And this process can deepen over time. So why I say that attunement is the remedy for addiction is because in my own experience, the deeper I go with my dance with the divine, the power of love, the spirit of love that continues to enter into my being, into my energy field, into my heart, and into my living, the more that happens, these addictive patterns dissolve. There is more courage to take a look at what's really going on in my life. So that's that's one of the gateways that the spirit of love opens. It opens up this ability for us to be courageous, to see the truth and be willing to face it, to hold the cycles of life from a place of non-judgment, from a place of love, from a place of care. And so when I think of my journey to wholeness, when I think of the journey of overcoming those addictive patterns in my own life, there was that piece that was the first piece of like surrender. It's like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I can't try to control the circumstances of my life. I can't keep trying to control the pain by numbing it out with pills or with alcohol. So that was the first major step. And the second step that I took was changing my I'm going to do it all myself kind of an attitude, and recognizing that I actually did need to connect with other people who are about their own evolution. So for me, I joined a spiritual community. At the time I lived in California, and I joined a Center for Spiritual Living, which was more in alignment with my views, because I consider myself spiritual but not religious. So I began to learn about spiritual principles. So this was another thing that really helped me, is actually learning how life works, to learn that there are natural laws that are governing this experience of life itself, and that I can come into alignment with those laws, that I can practice opening to something higher, that I can be aware of the laws of life, and that I can begin to start to apply these things to my living. And honestly, that is exactly what attunement is all about. And you know what? Even though this is a particular practice, there is a particular philosophy behind it, that word attunement is a universal word. It's, even though the emissaries coined it way back in the day, being in attunement is tuning in with reality, tuning in with love, tuning in with those natural laws that actually govern life, and tuning into our own experience, tuning into our own thoughts, and having some self-reflection. So for me, that was another major part of my experience in dissolving those patterns of addiction in my life. And so that journey continued to unfold. And I noticed when I started practicing the energy medicine practice of attunement, there was a quickening in dissolving these patterns. And I'm going to be completely honest, is like, there's more to do. There's always more to do for me. That's my truth, is that I realize and know the truth of my being at this time. But I know the more that I practice it, the more that I self-reflect, the more that I notice how I react instead of respond to the people in my life and to my own circumstances, I always know that there's work to do. There's more attunement to be had with something higher, with a higher love, a higher truth. So every time we allow ourselves to open and to receive this higher love and to let it move through us and out into our world, this is like a purifying process. It does dissolve the patterns of unworthiness, the patterns of shame, the patterns of thinking negative thoughts, and the patterns of isolation. So by being more in a group atmosphere and opening myself up to other people was a part of that. And so I want to, to me, attunement is living how we were meant to live. We are spiritual beings, and we are having a human experience. And when we are disconnected from that truth, when we are disconnected from the very source of life itself, when we are disconnected from all forms of life, and we don't see the magic and the mystery that's all around us, when we are so in our own head, and thinking like thoughts of unworthiness and worried about the future, ruminating upon the traumas and the pains of the past, when we are really not conscious about what we're doing and we're not practicing being in attunement with something higher, then we kind of get thrown around by life. Would you agree? It can feel like we're being victimized, like just stuff happens. And there we are sitting with whatever circumstances is presenting itself. So for me, I see that the more we become masterful with our thoughts and navigating the emotional realm, the more we become masterful with that, these patterns of addiction fall away. What I've noticed in myself is that the joy of living, the joy of creating, the joy of serving other people in their journey brings an energy to my living. It brings it energizes my body, and I become more and more open to inspiration. And isn't this what we sometimes seek to find through some of our addictions? We seek to find inspiration. I know that was something for me. Like smoking marijuana was something that I did for a long time. And, it did seem to make me more creative. But at the same time, it's like I could have creative ideas. But what it also did is it lowered my motivation. Like, I'd have a great idea, start working on it, because I'm a musician, I'd start working on a song, and maybe about 30 minutes into it, 40 minutes into it, I'd be like going strong, and then, I'd get distracted. Time to go get a snack, right? And maybe watch some TV. So with the practice of attunement, we're talking about spiritualizing our whole life. Our body. We're talking about allowing something higher, the true self, the highest self, to fully descend into this human experience and take the wheel, so to speak. And so what I've noticed is that as I've let go of these habits, addictions, I am much more in the flow of life. And there's not the desire to return to that way of living and that way of being, because this is so much better. I remember reading years ago, I think it was in a Deepak Chopra book about addiction, and it's very much in alignment with what I'm saying here, because in Ayurveda, they don't necessarily take people who are trying to detox or who are trying to overcome addiction and put them in a program that says you shouldn't do this, you need to abstain, you need to do all these things. But it's more about bringing something like massage, like these daily mindfulness things, really starting to recognize that there is more beauty to be expressed, there is more comfort to be experienced, there is more joy to be had in other things in life, rather than us depending on something outside of ourselves, like a drug or alcohol. It doesn't bring us fulfillment. It doesn't really bring us joy. Maybe the first time we maybe felt that, but if you're anything like me and you've been using something in your life to numb out, to cover up the pain of not living your authentic life, if you're anything like me, you know that even though in a moment you might get a few laughs, but it's really not bringing joy. It's really not. And I want to say also, for those who are out there who love someone who's struggling with addiction, Attunement is there for all of us, because when we're loving someone, and I have family members who are struggling with this, okay, people who I love with all of my heart and all of my soul, and I have learned over the years that I can't control it. I can't. That they are a sovereign being and they are on their path. And what I have learned through attunement is I can love them. I can set healthy boundaries. I know that it's not my job to fix anything. So those are some of the things that come with loving someone who's addicted, is you feel like you need to intervene, that you can save them from themselves. And it's just a vicious cycle. So with attunement, I've learned to forgive, and to not be moved by sometimes the extreme nature that addiction can take and the pain that it brings to a family. Like, what I mean by not being moved is like, it doesn't topple me. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't, like, even though it's sad, it can be sad and I can have emotions about it. But I remember the truth that only love is real. That these are the illusions that play out in the human experience when we've fallen asleep, when we have forgotten what our true orientation should be. So we, my friends, our mission here is to orient to what is true, to what is loving. And when we do that, these patterns that have been going on for millennia, that have actually been handed down generation to generation, they begin to be dissolved. So I just wanted to touch on this subject because it's up for me, because there are people in my life right now who are suffering. And I know there's so many people suffering. There is this epidemic of loneliness, this epidemic of addiction, because we have fallen asleep to the truth of who we are. And it's never too late. It's never too late to wake up. And for those of us who are like really loving and trying to support someone who is dealing with this, is like, I would encourage you to do your own work with seeing the angel that's within them, to seeing the potential that's there, really, because that is crucial. The reality is like we're one. And so if I'm holding some sort of idea about someone in my life, like, oh, they're just an addict, or they're not going to follow through, or here we go again, those kinds of thoughts, we are assisting them in staying in that place. That is the power that we have. That is why I say that attunement is the remedy. Our spiritual awakening is the remedy. Our spiritual regeneration is the remedy to this epidemic that is taking our country here in the USA and the world by storm. And so we have to come together. We have to, one, do our own healing, do our own work, get into attunement ourselves, and then recognize the power that we have to be an influence for good in the lives of others. To be guided, to hear the call, because there are going to be moments when someone that you love who is addicted, there's going to be this perfect moment when maybe something that you say or do catches their attention and reminds them of who they really are, and maybe inspires them to get the help that they need. And before I wrap up this video, I just want to give also credit for all the various programs out there, because in some way, the 12-step program, I know there's like Smart Recovery, all of it is helpful in this issue. So I don't want to say like all you need is attunement. even though, in some regards that's a truth. But I think people need support. I know for my own self, I'm just going to speak again from my own experience, is that thinking I had to do it all myself, keeping it all in, was part of what birthed some of those addictive behaviors. And so we do need each other. There's no way around that. We are in a universe that is always reciprocating. That life is all about giving and receiving. Just open your eyes, look at nature. There is not one form of life that is standing on its own, just like, hey, it's all about me. And sometimes that's what comes with addiction, right? We get so self-obsessed that it's all about me. It's about my pain. It's about my life. It's about what I want. It's about my dreams, my goals. And that's a part of our experience of like expression of the self. But that's not the big picture. The big picture is that we are one, and that we are here to give and to receive, to serve our world and to be served. That's the natural way that it works. That's a natural law. The universe is about giving and receiving. And so I hope that in some way, if you are dealing with an addiction right now of any sort, that this little excerpt had value. I'm right here and now sending you all kinds of love, because this is so vital, is that we come together and we assist each other in dissolving these patterns so that we can do what we need to do to elevate all of humanity. And it begins with me. It begins with you. So those are some of the thoughts I wanted to bring into today on this very important topic about attunement being a remedy for addiction. And I would like to follow up this video with a healing prayer for those who are either working with some sort of an addiction themselves or are loving someone who has an addiction, and you are maybe dealing with some suffering over that. So I want to bring some healing to that and to bring a prayerful space together. So stay tuned here. We're going to move into that prayer. Thank you so much. And if you got anything from this video today, please subscribe and know that we have an online community. You'll find the link in the section here called Becoming a Son Community. We have all kinds of wonderful programs on there. We have attunement services on Wednesdays and Sundays. So there's opportunities to begin to get out of your shell if you're feeling a little isolated, and start to connect with others and begin that process of learning spiritual principles and ways that you can do your own healing work. So that's the invitation here at the end. And thank you so much for joining here today for this, now I see, somewhat lengthy video, but blessings to you all. And what I know is that we have the power within us to dissolve this human experience of addiction. Thank you so much. Until next time, be well, be the love that you are, and be authentically you. So I invite you to move into this prayerful space with me. Find a comfortable place and simply allow yourself to come to a place of surrender, to come to a place of willingness, a willingness to have the highest love enter in. The willingness to have something powerful and miraculous move in this time together. So as you relax, I invite you to close your eyes as we move into this prayerful meditation. I invite you to take a deep breath. Knowing that as we breathe together in this moment, as we tune in to the cosmic reality of oneness for what I know here and now in this moment, is that there is only one power, one love, one presence that is everywhere. It is vast. It is eternal. And it is right here and now where I am. It is where we all are. We are each unique individualizations of this one infinite and eternal divine presence. We are divine. We are love. We are an individualization of the divine itself. And I know that moment by moment and breath by breath, as we breathe in this reality, as we are reminded of this reality, we recognize that we are one with all that is, that even though we are individual, we are connected to it all. We are a part of each other. And so right here and now in this moment, I am remembering the truth of who I am. And I am remembering the truth for the people that I love. I am remembering the truth about my own wholeness and the wholeness of all. Here and now, as I remember this truth, I feel so much love. I feel so much compassion for the human experience. For I know that these patterns of addiction that have shown up not only in myself, but in the people I love, I know that it dissolves when I remember the truth. When I allow love to flow, when I forgive, when I release, when I let go, when I surrender to the love that is all around me, when I surrender to the love that is within me, when I let that feeling flow. When I remember the truth of my being, those patterns begin to fall away. When I remember the truth of my brothers and my sisters, these patterns begin to fall away. And the reality of oneness, the reality of wholeness, the reality of peace, the reality of joy and creatorship begin to emerge breath by breath, moment by moment, as we remember together, as we forgive the mistakes of the past, as we surrender to love, as we take action in our lives that is in integrity with our spiritual nature. These patterns of addiction dissolve. I know right here and now that love regenerates and restores each and every one of us. And as I tune in to this higher love, there is this higher wisdom that pours into me. It inspires me. It reminds me of the power that is within, the power to heal, the power to renew and to restore. And so I speak words from this place, this reality. I see myself and the world around me through eyes of love and understanding. And it brings wholeness and healing to all. So be it now, and so it is.